between this and this, if I can keep the baby from waking up. And there is quite a difference between this and this. We have the good old KJV, and that's what I have always used. I just can't imagine using anything else. The Muslims ask me what version do I use. I imagine using anything but a King James. That to me would be really scary because I've always used the KJV. And the words sound so different when you look at other versions. It just doesn't hit home for me. Some people can do it no problem, but to me it's really difficult to do that to use other versions. I would rather you just use the King James. If there was a standard for everyone, I would say use the King James because I think it's the closest translation that we have. And the newer versions are getting more changed. So things are changing too much, and I would be scared to use anything else. To me, that's just like scary. So I use the King James. And the big difference that Muslims will tell you that the Quran is much better than the Bible. It's better preserved than the Bible. It's just so much better than the Bible, is what the Muslims will tell you. Well, the Bible, I believe, is much better preserved than the Quran because we have 66 different books written by 40 different people, not just one person over a span of a couple decades. I mean, Genesis, I have a hard time with people that are too over detailed. I'm like my 4-year-old, make it simpler. Make it simpler. When I'm talking to him, sometimes he'll say, make it simpler. Make it simpler. And I'll try to like break down things to the simplest component for him. That's what I like. Make it simpler, And don't make it too complicated. But the Bible, I do know, has 66 different books written by 40 different people spanning thousands of years. And it flows together perfectly. And the prophecies in the Torah were fulfilled with the New Testament. And I would rather people preach from the New Testament because a lot of what was in the Torah is done away with the New Testament. So, like, I went to a church today and they were preaching from the New Testament. I was really happy about that because I think the Old Testament is obviously, a lot of it's been nailed to the cross. According to Colossians 2:8 and 9, a lot of what's in the Old Testament has changed with the New Testament. And Muslims don't recognize like the big change that's happened between the Old Testament and the New Covenant or the New Testament, that big change there. So they're trying to put us back under the Old Testament, Old Covenant. And that's where we have to explain to them what the new covenant is, that Jesus shed his blood for us and we have a new covenant and we're not under this bondage of the law anymore. We're under the new covenant. So there's 2 testaments. There's like the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old Testament is filled with a lot of stories and a lot of laws and rules, but a lot of these things changed with the New Testament because Jesus fulfilled all of the animal sacrifices and a lot of the rules and like laws and stuff that they were supposed to follow in the Old Testament. We no longer have to shed the blood of animals. You never see a Christian church where they're shedding the blood of animals because that just doesn't happen anymore. So things changed with the New Testament, starting with Matthew. You'll see where the New Testament is, everything's changed. So the Quran, this was written 600 AD after Jesus died and resurrected. This was written 600 years later. So they already had the Old Testament and the New Testament when Muhammad started putting this whole Quran thing together. And it says that they basically preserved what Muhammad said on leaves bones, rocks, dead animals, and the memories of men. And a lot of them died in battle. So that's how this was preserved. And it was put together 20 years after Muhammad died, when the Muslims were starting to argue over what was said and what wasn't said. And a lot of the men had died who Muhammad said things to. So it's basically a compilation of all Muhammad's sayings about Allah. So this is basically one man's perspective over a couple decades, and it put together 20 years after he died. And they knew they didn't have everything that he said when they were putting this together. So how this is perfectly preserved is just beyond me, because they were already missing parts of it when they started putting it together. And then basically one of the Muslim leader people told all of the Muslim groups to burn everything else that they had. He put together one version of the Quran, and he told them to burn everything else that they had. So that just shows that there was parts of the Quran that were burned. There's parts that were lost in battle because men died, that new parts of the Quran. So some of it is missing from the beginning. And some of these scholar people, which I don't like to get all the way down into that, because it's make it simpler, make it simple. And some of these scholar people have said that only 5% of the Quran is what is here. So, and if that's true, then they lost 95% of it. And it died in battle, and then a lot of it was burned, and then they put together this Quran book, and then distributed this everywhere, and then this had to be the final one. So, but they'll tell you it was perfectly preserved. So, and then with the Bible, they have 5,000 manuscripts, handwritten copies, because they didn't have a printer in their house. They didn't have copy machines back then, so they would hand write out each copy of the Old Testament and the New Testament. It was all handwritten out. So there's many copies from, back in Jesus's day that they still have. And then the Dead Sea Scrolls. I remember this old house I had. I was like, I'm going to look in the attic because these are older people and they collected stuff. I'm definitely going to find a treasure. So I climbed all the way up into the attic, and it was scary. And I got up there, and there's a book about the Dead Sea Scrolls. And the Dead Sea Scrolls basically, I think it was back in the 50s, showed you that they found these scrolls in a cave. I think it was a kid that was throwing rocks into a cave and then hit something, and then figured out that it was manuscripts that were in these big, huge pot things from priests from a long time ago. And that showed them that nothing had changed with the Bible, that it was perfectly preserved. So the Dead Sea Scrolls are really cool too, if you want to look that one up. But the Bible is written by 40 different people, 66 different books spanning thousands of years. And then you have the Quran. One man's, revelation. Parts of it were definitely lost in the making of this. And it was only a couple decades. So, this was put together maybe over a 40-year span of Muhammad's life, and then 20 years after his death. Maybe a 40-year span this thing was put together. Thousands of years, and this is put together. One author, 40 different authors, And just the names of some of these books just make me laugh. Like the cow or the women. I mean, just kind of makes me laugh. Maybe I'm a little bit immature, but makes me laugh. And then you look in here and it has like Corinthians and Thessalonians, like the names of cities where these people were indwelling. And so many names and places are in the Bible where you don't get that out of the Quran. It doesn't have all these names and places and, factual events that could be traced back. where the Bible has all these factual things that you can trace back in history. You can see that this happened. So these are just, it's night and day. It's literally night and day. And I've tried to explain that to Muslims, and very hard for them to suck up their pride and really look into it. But the Bible is so much more put together, better put together by more and more people than the Quran. 40 different people versus one person. Thousands of years versus a couple decades. You know, you really got to think about it. What's